So what do you think orcs do on their days off? You know, the orcs in the Lord of the Rings books and movies. Big yellow teeth, fangs, really. Green leathery hides, black eyes, claws on the ends of their fingers, growling, mean, monstrous. Well, monsters. You know, the bad guys. Ever wonder what they do on their days off? When they need a bit of orc me time? Stamp collecting, playing bad cover bands? Is there orc community theater? Book clubs? Of course not. They're orcs. They're monsters. Evil. And that's that. Now, I bring this up, one, because I'm a geek and think about orcs a lot, but mostly because, as far as I can tell, we're all pretty sure the world is full of orcs. We see them all over the place. Maybe not with the green leathery hide and yellow fangs, but we see them and we know them for evil. So evil is, it wears white hoods and marches. It puts on blackface. It paints swastikas. It wears polos and yoga pants and waves guns at peaceful protesters walking by the house. It's named Karen and calls the cops on bird watchers or little girls with lemonade stands, if that bird watcher or little girl happens to be black. It is corporations putting profit before people and oil companies ravaging the environment. Or it's a government that shuts down small businesses and forces us to wear face masks. It is a white cop kneeling on the back of a black man's neck for 7 minutes and 46 seconds. Oh yeah, we've all seen evil. We know it when we see it, and it's not who we are. Orcs are out there, but we're not orcs. And that is the trouble with monsters. As long as we think the monsters are out there, as long as we can point them out, vilify them or mock them, blame them, and point out that we're not them, nobody's looking at us. We're not looking at ourselves. So as long as there are at least a few monsters out there doing monstrous things, we can tell ourselves, well, I don't do that. I'm not an orc. Wipe our hands and go on with our lives. The trouble with monsters is they set the bar too low. They let us off the hook. They let us not ask this question. Is not being a monster enough? Now, these days, like many people, I'm looking at this question through the lens of race. For decades, really, pretty much all of my lifetime, whites in this country have had the luxury of pretending we fixed racism in the 1960s. I mean, sure, we knew there were some real racists out there, card-carrying, Confederate flag-waving, white supremacist orcs. But we weren't them. As long as we weren't them, as long as we didn't use the N-word, as long as we didn't tell racist jokes, or, well, you know, not too many of them, or laugh too hard when we heard them, as long as we weren't the ones who didn't hire someone because of the color of her skin, as long as we told our kids they should see everyone the same, no matter the color of their skin, well, then we were okay. We're the good guys. We're not racist. That isn't who we are. But isn't it? See, I think when we say, this isn't who I am, what we usually mean is, in our heart of hearts, this isn't who I want to be. Or maybe sometimes, if we're really honest with ourselves, this isn't who I want other people to see I might be. In truth, we might not be the good guys in this story. We might be the villains. Well, I mean, not probably the villain. Maybe not even the villain's henchman. I mean, we're maybe the villain's support staff. We may not commit the evil deeds, but we file the paperwork that makes those deeds easier for the villains to commit. I've struggled with this idea. that I'm not the hero of this story. Most of you know I love me a good comic book story. And if I'm in that story, I want to be the hero. But it turns out most stories aren't my story. And I still struggle with that. I don't think of myself as racist. And if we use that word only to mean the marching bigots who really think white people are superior, then I'm not a racist. But that brings us back to the trouble with monsters. I'm not a hate-spewing bigot is setting the bar really low. And if that's what we think racism is, most of us will never feel the need to confront it in ourselves or in our well-meaning friends and family. But racism, like most faces of evil, is so much more insidious than that. As Jewish theologian Abraham Heschel often said, the opposite of good isn't evil, it's indifference. All evil needs to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And nothing is so easy to do. I mean, it is for me anyway, because I'm pretty comfortable in this country. I may think things should change, but I don't have to feel a sense of urgency about it. I have the privilege of patience. I can believe the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice without ever really having to think too hard about why it does or how it does and whether I should be doing something to help it along. But then, in recent weeks, I look up from my comfortable life and I see a police officer slowly crushing the breath out of a man. A black man is murdered for jogging through a white neighborhood. And it goes on, and I want so badly to say, this isn't who we are. But it is. It is who we are as a culture, as a nation, as a people. This is who we are. And the way we avoid admitting it is by telling ourselves that we aren't monsters. I stumbled over that sentence. I'm going to read it again. The way we avoid admitting that reality to ourselves is by telling ourselves, honestly, that we aren't monsters. The truth we hide from ourselves is that we don't have to be monsters for this to be us. We can be good people and enable a racist culture. Not only can we do. But now, confronted with it, we as a people finally seem to see that this is real. This is us, and that we really are someone we don't want to be. And making that admission is hard. It might make us feel ashamed. It does for me. And my mother texted me in the midst of all of this and said the same thing. And that's fine, as long as we don't let that shame or guilt become the fuel to deny or avoid thinking about our own roles in racist society. In her book, White Fragility, Robin DiAngelo writes about how one of the reasons racism persists in this country is we feel so bad about it, we don't want to admit that we've done it. But as she writes, we cannot change what we will not see. And we all are complex people. We are all bad seeds and good seeds. And we have to embrace that to be whole and to get better. As Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, when we look deeply into ourselves, we see both flowers and garbage. Each of us has anger, hatred, depression, racial discrimination, and many other kinds of garbage in us. But there is no need for us to be afraid. In the way that a gardener knows how to transform compost into flowers, we can learn the art of transforming anger, depression, and racial discrimination into love and understanding. But we can't do that until we see it. And what Thich Nhat Hanh expresses there is such a universalist idea that while we are all worthy, we are also all flawed. And those flaws do not give us an excuse to stop trying. So, okay. There's evil in the world, and we're part of it. So what are we going to do about it? Well, for starters, we need to stop saying this isn't who we are. We have to admit, I may not like it. I don't like it. But this is who we are right now. And only then can we change who we are, move closer to being the people we hope to be. But how? And that's the thing that's stymied me. How? If we want to be a people who, in the words of our mission statement, the MSUS mission statement, work for a flourishing world, how do we move toward who we hope to be? Well, by not getting paralyzed into doing nothing, which is what's happened to me. By leaving our comfort zones. You know, the most important step a person can take is always our next step. We change the world by helping each other take one more step. And then the next step after that. But what I don't actually hear you saying, but I hear in my own head, what are those steps, Chad? You're talking in generalities, and you're right, I am. Because I'm not sure I can answer that question, at least not for other people. I'll tell you the answer I came up with for me for now. For me, in this moment, right now, the first step is listening. Reading books about race in America that make me feel uncomfortable and sad and challenge my own sense of goodness. Finding and watching documentaries in which Black people offer up some of their stories so we can get a glimpse into the world we have always watched from our perspective and see it from theirs. There's a 90-minute documentary. I don't have the link to it now, but I'll make it available for Laura to send when she sends out this service. It's 90 minutes of just people from the Twin Cities, Black people sharing their stories of how they have experienced race in this country. And it is so illuminating. And it is such a gift for these folks to take the time to share that with us. And so I'm taking that sort of thing in. I'm listening. And I know that's just the first step. It's frankly an overdue bare minimum. It's not enough, but it is a start. And I'm hoping in the process, I'll learn something that will show me what the next step is. And I'm hoping that I have the courage to take that step. But if I falter, if I hesitate, no, when I falter, when I hesitate, when I get it wrong, I hope you, members of my faith community, tell me. Call me out. Our mission statement calls us to challenge one another with loving kindness to be our best selves and work for a flourishing world. To challenge one another with loving kindness. It's the only way we're going to grow. And in the spirit of that mission, let's take a few minutes to share a bit about where we are in this journey. What you're doing to try to confront the reality of race in this country and our roles in it. You know, at the end of each of these reflections, we are taking time to share those perspectives. And so please raise your hand again, either by hitting the raised hand button in Zoom or waving your hand on camera or typing into the chat box, and we'll call on people. You know, we need to do this together. And I, for one, could use some inspiration and some ideas because I know I've got a lot to learn.
Marie, I think you have to unmute yourself.
Something that I've been doing more consciously is, well, talking to Black people. It's amazing how much we don't. And if you don't talk to people, you don't get to know them on a personal basis, and it's a lot easier to put it out there if you don't know people personally. I've had a friend, I haven't talked to her for a long time, a Black woman, and I have been texting her more often, and she's been telling me how she feels. And it's, like Chad said, really hard to listen to, but I need to. We had some friends on Friday night come over in the backyard, and they're Black, we're white, and we had a very good conversation. Actually talking to people makes a huge difference.
And not just talking, but listening.
Yeah, listening. That's it for now.
Thank you, Bruce and Marie. Ben.
One of the things that I've been thinking through recently, with the recognition that one of the pieces of fallout, I guess, one of the repercussions of the systemic racism and how things have worked for so many years is just the inability to acquire wealth for people of color. And so thinking through how I might actually be able to help that, and with the thought that, for example, when I die and I will almost certainly at least have a house. I won't have a lot of wealth, but there'll be something there. And rather than, and I'm not going to have children, and even if I did, they probably can fend for themselves. Instead of it just going to the highest bidder in an auction or something, basically going to people who already have wealth, finding a way to create a property trust or a real estate trust that can be effectively redistributed to those who've been, I mean, land has historically been the single biggest ability to acquire land is how a family, how a people acquire wealth. And so to figure out how it is that when probably my ancestors somewhere along the line got a really good deal on some Indian land, maybe I can basically put my land out there, my property out there for someone just to pick up below market. It seems like, and so that's something I've been trying to work through and reach out to some folks and figure out how to put something like that together, because I think it could be really powerful if a whole lot of people, when we're done with the wealth we have, because that's, I mean, I know a lot of people don't like the idea of wealth redistribution, but certainly when we're done with it, it might as well go to someone who needs it as opposed to people most able to grab it.
Thank you, Ben. Jan.
Good morning. One of my Black friends posted on Facebook recently that it's the job of white people to educate other white people, not the job of the Black community. And I've been taking that seriously. And so when I have friends who post things like All Lives Matter, I reach out to them, and not in a confrontational way, but trying to educate. And sometimes it's pointless. But other times
you lose some Facebook friends.
Yes, and I lose some Facebook friends. But other times I think it does get through. And I've also been posting lists of books. The Dolly Chug book, The Person You Mean to Be, is, I think, a really great place to start for people. So I've been trying to do that as much as I can.
Polly, you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I unfortunately grew up in a very racist household. The word colored and the N-word were used frequently, and many jokes of bad taste, but some really deep down values and judgments that are still a part of me. I've tried so much throughout my 52 years to go against those messages. So this feeling of there is something wrong with me and wrong internally to me is nothing that's new. What is new is the opportunities that are coming right now to listen to all these people and their pain, and try and make that a part of my experience, to move forward in a way of being open to non-ignorance or education.
Thank you, Polly. I don't see any other hands. Oh, yes. Oh, Snyder. Don't know.
I too have been trying to educate myself, and I'm a little embarrassed by how I haven't recognized my white privilege. My daughter Laura sent me links to the Smithsonian's put together a whole website on talking about race. So I've been working through those materials, and like Marie, I have been talking to some of my friends who are Black, trying to get their perspectives. One of my friends who's a colleague, who is a French Canadian, but came from Africa, had a very interesting perspective in terms of the racism I see in the States is nothing compared to the racism that I lived through in Barramundi, which also caused me to, really think about how I never really, paid attention to any of the genocide that was going on there either. And that these problems are not, yes, certainly we need to fix the problems in our own country, but there's also an international overtone to everything. And like Chad, I'm worried that I'm just going to educate and then not do anything. And I feel that it's, I need to do what I can to help dismantle the systems that have given me the privilege. But I've got a long ways to go.
I don't